I'm just going to continue going through this article, just sort of skipping down to some of the more key points. On this article, I came across a picture of Paula Cantor, and she is a blonde woman with glasses. So that's very much the second woman that I saw who mentioned tea. Now what's interesting about that symbolism is Jacqueline Ann Sutton is British. She's from the UK. So I feel like when the blonde woman appeared and said tea, I feel like she was trying to help guide me to this woman in particular, being British, to help me figure out, when I did wake up and do the research on Ann Sutton missing, that it would be more tied to this person in particular. In June of that year, Jacqueline wrote an email to one of her friends talking about, I'm in a hotel at the moment, a low-key one with hardly any guests. The accommodation that had been prepared was basically one room and a bathroom above the office with only one door in and out, and that off the street. So if someone came in uninvited, I was trapped. And as my Kurdish friend said, it just needs one wacko to hear in the Friday prayers that killing foreigners is jihad, and they'll come knocking at your door in a heartbeat. Erbil has grown, but everyone knows where the foreigners are staying. If ISIS wants to attack, they will, but it will take planning, and I won't be the target. If the wacko wants to get to heaven, he or she will have to contend with armed guards and a choice of targets, and the same with criminal kidnappers, a growth industry in Iraq. So essentially with that email, she was just discussing how she was sort of a little bit fearful with the situation going on and being a possible target of many for ISIS and the terror attacks and stuff that's going on. So here's where we get into the night of her death. Miss Sutton arrived in Istanbul on Turkish Airlines flight TK1986 at about 10 p.m. local time on Saturday night, and was then due to fly to Erbil at about midnight, but she missed that flight, it was reported. Video footage posted on Turkish news website Haberler reportedly shows her body being carried out of the airport in a black bag. Friends and colleagues have described her reported suicide as impossible to understand, because basically all of her friends and colleagues were saying they can't believe that she would commit suicide at all. There was no signs or any sort of indication, and in fact the opposite, because, and we'll get into that in some of these other articles, but there was just a lot that would seem to hint that it's not a suicide. All of her friends and colleagues who knew her better than me find it impossible to understand. It doesn't accord with what anyone knows about her. I'm not going to say I knew what was in her heart and mind, but she had a positive natured outlook. So these are just quotes from her friends and colleagues. According to the local reports, Miss Sutton killed herself after missing a connecting flight to Iraq and admitting she did not have enough money to pay for another ticket. So that was the initial report and the initial story. She missed her flight, her connecting flight from Turkey to Iraq, and she reportedly said that she didn't have enough money to buy another ticket, so she was distraught over that, and she was found dead later that night. One of her closest friends is quoted as saying, I know a flight from Istanbul to Erbil is a couple of $100s. This is not someone on her first trip away from home. She was a seasoned global traveler. If you miss a flight, you go off and have a drink and relax, and then just buy a new ticket. So another friend of hers is saying she was dedicated to developing freedom of speech in Iraq, freedom of expression in Iraq, and was also trying to better herself by studying for her PhD. So again, this is a woman that is dedicated to this sort of activism in Iraq. She's going to college to get a PhD in her field. She just became the director of the IWPR, like I said earlier. And her whole life is dedicated to this. And for her to just commit suicide because she missed her second flight, that it doesn't add up. And then you have all of her friends and colleagues saying they just can't believe that she would commit suicide. There's just no way. So here's the part that really piqued my interest even further. There's another quote from a friend, Christian Bluer. He says, "Toughest woman you could meet. The Turkish police say she committed suicide because she missed her flight," with a question mark. He added, "I'm not into conspiracies, but if the Turks are saying a security camera at the Istanbul Ataturk was malfunctioning, then Jacky Sutton was murdered." So that piqued my interest as well. They're claiming that the security camera was malfunctioning. So I guess that means it didn't get the footage of, whatever her last moments or whatever was going on in the airport, in the particular location where she was found dead. So come on, that's very suspect. You have another friend of hers saying, "I'm unconvinced that she would have committed suicide. I am skeptical of the idea. I absolutely think that there needs to be a full investigation." So her friends and colleagues are calling for a full investigation, and not just of the local authorities, but also of the British Foreign Affairs Office to be allowed to investigate there. It is said that Jacky had taken up work countering the anti-women messaging of the Islamic State. Miss Sutton was born in Hatfield, Hertfordshire. That's where she's from. Her and her family moved to Malden, Essex when she was 7. So I guess she grew up there, really. And she recently lived in a 2-bedroom flat in Acton, West London. According to her LinkedIn profile, Miss Sutton, who studied at Strathclyde and Warwick Universities, also worked for the United Nations and was a producer and broadcaster for BBC World between 1998 and 2000. She graduated from Warwick University. She spent 2 years in Canada before returning to London to study for a master's, when she became involved in the City of London anti-apartheid group and worked for the Angolan Embassy. She then worked for the UN International Fund for Agricultural Development in Rome, where she also presented news on Vatican Radio. She was encouraged to travel to Eritrea by a contact she met on the radio station and spent 5 years there, from 1993 to 1998, during which time she met her husband, Charles. So this is just going into like her life and her backstory, basically, and all of the type of work that she did. There's a short video of her from 2008 where she's talking about how Iraq is dangerous for media professionals. There's a mention of a time when she was working in Afghanistan and Iran, and she had to flee to Ghana after she helped a British friend arrested on suspicion of murder leave Afghanistan. I think that the point that this is trying to make is that she led a sort of a dangerous life in some regards. In other words, there would be potential motives for someone to murder her because of the type of political activism she was tied up in and the territory she was in often. The final thing that really piqued my interest on this article was when I got to the very bottom of it, and there's a little section that says read more, and there's another article link that says ANU academic Jacky Sutton dies in Turkey, colleagues, family unconvinced, cause was suicide, ABC News, Australian Broadcasting Corporation. So when I saw that, it clicked for me from my dream when one of the other girls mentioned that she heard the spirit say ABC, and then was cut off because the spirit vanished. And then the other girl was saying, oh, I know what that is. That's another building. So when I saw this at the bottom of the article linking to the other article with Australian Broadcasting Corporation or ABC News, I was like, okay, that's what the ABC was about in my dream. So that was very interesting. And then another part of this article that caught my attention was when they mentioned that she was currently enrolled in school to get her PhD to continue to further her work. It mentioned that she was enrolled in Australian National University. Now, when I saw that, what piqued my interest was, okay, now this is really getting really interesting, because the dream took place on a college campus, and the person I first met with in the dream that was acting as my guide, the guy, had an accent. So now we're talking about Australia and this college campus there where this guy guided me to. Very curious. So I looked at Australian National University aerial view on Google Maps. Okay, that is actually one more thing I didn't mention. In the dream, the field and the tree where the spirits were, there was water nearby as well, which I thought was interesting, and that stood out to me as well. And I did write that in my journal, I just forgot to mention it on the video. When I looked up this college with aerial view, what immediately caught my attention is that there's a creek called Sullivan's Creek that flows right through the center of this college campus. And by the way, this college is in Canberra in New South Wales, Australia as well. So what I was looking for when I was looking at the maps was a field with water close by and potentially trees nearby where I would have seen the spirit. And what I found was exactly that. And what's intriguing about it is the field is called Fellows Oval Field. It's on the campus. Part of the college that she was enrolled in was the Center for Arab and Islamic Studies and Research. So that building in particular, because with college campuses there's different buildings that are dedicated to different branches of study and stuff like that, and the one that she was enrolled in is right beside this field, Fellows Oval Field, and the creek also flows right beside this. So it's just very much to me exactly what I saw in my dream. This was another part that I think was also sort of symbolic and metaphor, when in the dream the girls told me that Ann Sutton was missing and no one knew where she was or if she was dead or not. What's symbolic about that was the way leading up to Jacqueline's death, she missed her second flight. And that's in, the word missing in particular is in a lot of the news article titles. Like this one is called Fears ex-BBC journalist found hanged in airport after missing Iraq flight was murdered. But with this article, it just once again talks about how that security camera in the airport was malfunctioning. Then they are suspecting that she was murdered. Another friend of hers, because let's remember too, she was at a memorial service for one of her colleagues just within days of her dying. So one of her friends who was at that memorial service with her is quoted as saying this: she was incredibly passionate, considered, and rational about Iraq and the work she did there. We met for an hour and she was talking specifics about the projects she was working on, her family, and her plans for her next trip back there. Her death came out of the blue. It's unbelievable. There was another quote from someone at the memorial service saying that she left everyone feeling inspired and uplifted by the things that she was saying at the memorial service. So that's very just counter to her committing suicide just days later. So this article basically ends with the Foreign Office spokesman saying, "We can confirm the death of a British national in Istanbul. We are providing consular assistance to the family at this difficult time, and we will remain in close contact with Turkish authorities," on express.co.uk. So that'll be that link in the description box. Next article I want to talk about is on HuffPost.com. Istanbul airport video raises questions about journalist Jacky Sutton's death. So now we have an airport video. How is this possible after they initially reported that the camera was malfunctioning? The video shows Sutton with a full shopping bag, contrasting with reports that she didn't have money for a ticket. So the original story was she missed her flight, she didn't have enough money to buy another ticket, and that's the alleged reason why she killed herself. But now we have the video all of a sudden, no camera malfunction, and we have her apparently shopping in the airport's gift shop and stuff like that with full shopping bags after this alleged conversation where she said she didn't have enough money to buy a new ticket. It doesn't add up. It's here posted if you guys want to watch it. I'm probably going to watch it after I do this video. In the first half of the video, a woman identified as Sutton by local media walks up to a security checkpoint and appears to show paperwork to two guards. She proceeds through the stop with a backpack and a shoulder bag. In the second half of the video, the woman is walking through the airport with the same bags, but her shoulder bag now looks more full, along with what appears to be a full shopping bag.